Very good evening to one and all. I'm delighted to welcome you all to this C20 Policy Roundtable for Green Finance. Today we gather here to discuss most pressing issues of our planet, that is climate change, and the crucial role that finance can play in it. As we all know, the effects of climate change are becoming increasingly apparent. Rising temperatures, more frequent natural disasters, loss of biodiversity are some of the challenges that we face. We need urgent action that has never been greater, and this is where the green finances comes in. The potential of green finance to help combat climate change is immense. It can help finance renewable energy, promote energy efficiency, support sustainable agriculture, create lots of jobs, reduce GHG emissions, and so on and so forth. And the most important is also drives the economic growth. So today when we gather to discuss these issues and explore how we can work together to advance green finance, and we have incredible lineup of speakers and including experts from academia, government, industry, who will share their thoughts and insights and experiences. I am confident that today's discussions will be informative, insightful, and thought-provoking. I hope they will inspire all of us to take actions to address climate change and promote sustainable future. No function is going to start without blessings from Ma Saraswati. So I request all the dignitaries on the dais to light the lamp and seek blessings from Ma Saraswati. Thank you all. I request all the dignitaries to kindly take a seat amongst the audience, because I would request Dr. Murali Krishnan, Associate Professor at School of Business, Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeeth, Coimbatore campus, to introduce SRC, C20 and net zero emissions of management. Until he actually adorns the dais, I would request SRC to play Ma Amritanandmayi video.
നിസ്വാർത്ഥതയാണ് പ്രകൃതിയുടെ നിയമം. എടുക്കുന്ന സംസ്കാരത്തിൽ നിന്ന് കൊടുക്കുന്ന സംസ്കാരത്തിലേക്ക് നമ്മൾ ഉയരേണ്ടിയിരിക്കും. ചെടികളും വൃക്ഷങ്ങളും മറ്റ് ജീവജാലങ്ങളുമെല്ലാം നമ്മുടെ തന്നെ ഭാഗമാണെന്ന് തിരിച്ചറിഞ്ഞ് നമ്മൾ സംരക്ഷിക്കണം. ഓരോ മരം വെട്ടുമ്പോൾ ഓർക്കണം, തൻ്റെ ശവപ്പെട്ടി ഉണ്ടാക്കാൻ വേണ്ടിയാണ്, തൻ്റെ ശവപ്പെട്ടിയാണ് ഇതിലൂടെ ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്നത്. ആ ബോധം നമ്മളിലേക്ക് കൊണ്ടുവരാൻ കാരണം വന്നേ മതിയാകുള്ളൂ. പ്രകൃതിയുടെ താളം തെറ്റി അങ്ങനെ തിരിച്ചടി അനുഭവിച്ചു തുടങ്ങിയ ഒരു കാലഘട്ടത്തിലാണ് നമ്മളിന്ന് ജീവിക്കുന്നത്. ഒരു വൃക്ഷം എത്ര പഴങ്ങൾ നമുക്ക് എത്ര വർഷം തന്നുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നു, തണല് തരുന്നു, തടി തരുന്നു. നമ്മൾ എടുത്ത് നശിപ്പിച്ച് ഒരു പുഴു പോലും സമൂഹത്തിൽ ചെയ്യുന്നത്ര നമ്മൾ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുന്നില്ല. മനുഷ്യൻ മരിക്കുമ്പോൾ ഒരു പിടി ചായ വേണം, അന്തരീക്ഷത്തെ മലിനമാക്കി ഒരു പക്ഷേ പോകാതിരിക്കാം. ജഡം കൊണ്ട് ഇന്ന് കെട്ടി വയ്ക്കുമ്പോൾ ഒരു ജാവകണ്ടോ ഒഴിക്കാം, അതും ഭൂമിക്ക് ദോഷമാണ്. അതേപോലെ ഒഴിവര പോലും പ്രകൃതി എന്തിനും കൊടുത്തിട്ടേ പോകത്തുള്ളൂ. നമ്മൾ നാശം വെച്ചിട്ടേ പോകത്തുള്ളൂ, നശിപ്പിച്ച് നാശം വെച്ചേ പോകുന്നു. നമ്മൾ ഒത്തിരി ദൂരെ പോയി, ഇനി തിരിച്ച് നടന്ന് നമ്മൾ എത്തുമെന്ന് തോന്നുന്നില്ല. നമ്മൾ ഒത്തിരി നടന്ന് ദൂരെ പോയിക്കും. ഇനി തിരിച്ചുകൊണ്ടെന്ന് ഈ ജന്മം കൊണ്ട് തിരിച്ചു വരാൻ പറ്റില്ല. എന്നാൽ കുറച്ചെങ്കിലും നമ്മൾ നടക്കാം, അത്രയെങ്കിലും എടുക്കാമല്ലോ. അങ്ങ് നമ്മൾ ശ്രമിക്കുക. മദേഴ്സ് ഡേയും ഫാദേഴ്സ് ഡേയും ഒക്കെ ഗംഭീരമായി ആഘോഷിക്കുന്ന പോലെ പ്രകൃതിയെ ആദരിക്കാനും ആരാധിക്കാനും നമുക്കെല്ലാം ഒരു ദിവസം ഉണ്ടാകും. അന്ന് ലോകമെമ്പാടുമുള്ളവർ നിർബന്ധമായും വിഷത്തേകൾ നടണം. ഒന്നും നിസ്സാരമല്ല. ഒരു പ്ലെയിൻ എഞ്ചിനില്ലെങ്കിലും പറക്കാൻ പറ്റും, കേടുവന്നാലും പറക്കാൻ പറ്റില്ല, സ്കൂൾ ഇല്ലെങ്കിലും പറക്കാൻ പറ്റില്ല. ഒന്നും നിസ്സാരമല്ല, അതിനും അതിൻ്റെ സ്ഥാനത്തിന് അന്തരീക്ഷ ശുദ്ധീകരണം ഉണ്ടാകണം. പ്രകൃതി മലിനീകരണം, വേസ്റ്റ് പിന്തുടരണം, പച്ചക്കറികളുടെ തന്നെ വർഷങ്ങൾക്ക് മുമ്പ് പറയും, മക്കളെ പ്രവർത്തിക്കുകയും ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. ഇതിനോട് ജാഗ്രതയായി എല്ലാവരും ഒത്തൊരുമിച്ച് എന്നാൽ ഈ ഭൂമിയെ ദിവസമാക്കാൻ മനസ്സിലാക്കും. അതിന് ആദ്യം ഉള്ളിൽ സ്വന്തം സൃഷ്ടിക്കണം. ഹൃദയത്തിൽ നിന്ന് ആ പ്രയത്നം കൊണ്ടുവരാനുള്ള നിശ്ചിതമായിട്ട് എടുക്കണം. പ്രപഞ്ചത്തിനൊരു താളമുണ്ട്. ഈ വിശുദ്ധം അതിൽ അഗ്രജീവിയാണെന്ന മകേതുമായ ബന്ധമുണ്ട്. പരസ്പരം ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട് കിടക്കുന്ന നെറ്റ്വർക്കുകളാണ് ഈ പ്രപഞ്ചം. 4 പേര് ചേർന്ന് പിടിച്ച് ഇവരുടെ കോൺക്ഷനം ഉണ്ടാകും. അതെല്ലായിടവും പ്രതിഫലിക്കും. അതുപോലെ നാം അറിഞ്ഞോ അറിയാതെയോ ഒറ്റയായോ കൂട്ടമായോ ചെയ്യുന്ന എല്ലാ കർമ്മങ്ങളും പ്രപഞ്ചമാകുന്നവരുടെ കൂടി പ്രതിഫലിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. അവർ മാറി നമ്മളെ മാറി നടക്കില്ല. അവർ മാറി നമ്മളെ മാറിയാൽ മാറ്റം. നമുക്ക് എന്ത് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുമെന്ന് നോക്കണം. കഴിഞ്ഞ 60 വർഷത്തിനുള്ളിൽ നമ്മുടെ സമുദ്രസമ്പത്തിൻ്റെയും ജലാശയങ്ങളുടെയും നിലനിൽപ്പിന് ആധാരമായി അവയുടെ ഉപരിതലത്തിൽ നിലകൊള്ളുന്ന ചെറുപായ 40% നശിച്ചായി ശാസ്ത്രജ്ഞന്മാർ പറയും. കടജീവികൾക്ക് ജീവശക്തിയും ഊർജവും നൽകുന്ന ഈ ജീവികൾ ഈ അളവിൽ ഇല്ലാതാകുന്നത് തുടർന്നാൽ മത്സ്യവും മറ്റു സമുദ്രരൂപങ്ങളും ക്ഷയിച്ച് ക്രമേണ ഇല്ലാതെ നമ്മളെ പ്രസവിച്ച അമ്മ ചിലപ്പോൾ 2-3-5 വയസ്സ് വരെ മടിയിലെടുത്ത് സുഖമാനില്ല. ജീവിതകാലം മുഴുക്കുകയും ചവിട്ടാനും തുപ്പാനും ഇരിക്കാനും അനവധി സമയമാണ്. ജീവിതകാലം മുഴുവൻ നമ്മളെ കുറ്റി വളർന്ന എല്ലാത്തിൻ്റെയും പുരുഷശക്തിയാണ്. ആ അമ്മയുടെ കടമ നമ്മൾ ഒരിക്കലും മറക്കരുത്.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. My humble pranams at the Lotus Feet of Ma. So, good evening to all. I just have a brief presentation on sustainable and resilient communities. We represent the Net Zero Emissions Management Group. I'll slowly come to that specific sub-theme later in the presentation. This is going to be a very brief presentation. I'll take about 5 to 7 minutes to complete the presentation. So who are we? I mean, when you're looking at the G20 nations, we know that there are 19 countries, prominent nations across the globe, plus the European nation, the European Union, and then subsequently you have the inviting nations like Bangladesh, Egypt, Singapore, United Arab Emirates, along with other international organizations like UN, IMF, and World Bank. So this is a very prominent, profound group of nations we have. And what is the role of the C20? C20, when you look at, if you examine the G20 nations, the level of engagement is at the head of the states and then probably the governments. C20 represents the voice of civil societies, what the people of the nations think and how do you translate that into the policy recommendations. So C20 is a very significant, plays a very significant role with respect to how do civil societies contribute to the development in G20 nations. Now, why is it so profound? 2/3 of world population lives in the G20 nations. 60% of the world land area is covered in the G20. We have 75% of the global trade and 80% of the gross world product coming from the G20 nations. So it is a profound significance in the way that we need to manage the global economy, the financial stability, the climate change mitigation, and look at the sustainable development. C20 plays a major role here with respect to coming out with people's voice and then adopting that into the G20 nations agenda. Coming to C20, we have Mada Amritanandamayi Devi as the chair of the C20. Mada Amritanandamayi, popularly known as Amma. Amma is a world-renowned humanitarian. Amma is the founder of Mada Amritanandamayi Math, and she is the chancellor of Amrita Vishwavidyapith. Amma has a lot of initiatives with respect to humanitarian aspects. The whole philosophy moves around empowering community, and she believes that empowering community cannot happen without empowering youth and empowering citizens, and all this should be compassion driven. So that is the philosophy underlying the C20 initiatives led by Amma. Now, looking at the working group structure, we have C20 chair, which is Amma, C20 principal coordinator, who is known as the Sherpa. Then we have the working groups, which national and international coordinators. We have a steering committee which leads this initiative. We also have an international executive committee, and then we have the sub-thematic groups. Thematic 1 basically talks about its climate resilience and social justice. Theme 2 essentially focuses on environmental sustainability. Theme 3 is the net zero emissions management. Current event is actually organized under the directions of net zero emissions management. And then we have Theme 4, which talks about the compassion-driven approach to sustainable development. Now, when you examine the working group vision, basically we have 3 components to it. One looks at the climate justice. The second one is about measuring the impact of existing interventions, and the third one looks at what are the best strategies possible. I mean, you'll also hear about udaharans, or the best practices which are available across the globe and which is being compiled under the C20 initiative. The working group coordinator, we have Dr. Manisha Ramesh, who is an outstanding scientist. She is also the Dean of School of Sustainable Development and the Provost of Amrita School, Vishwavidyapitham. Then we have Vinod Chandra Menon, he's already here, professor is here. Then Dr. Atish Shivan. We have an international executive committee comprising of Dr. Rajiv Shaw, Mr. Drazer, Pugiono, and then Salimul Haq. The working group sub-themes, basically there are 4 of them. One is compassion-driven approach to sustainable and resilient communities. We have climate resilient and social justice, then environmental sustainability, and the net zero emissions management. As I already said, this particular event is organized under the Net Zero Emissions Management Initiative. This is the Net Zero Emissions Management Initiative led at the Amrita. So we have Dr. Shashankar and Dr. Murli Rangarajan leading the group. Now, with regard to the events organized under the Net Zero Emissions Management, we had a hybrid event in Delhi on February 8th. Subsequently, we had one in Coimbatore in March 10th and 11th. We also had an event on renewable electricity and renewable integrated grids, which was done virtually on March 17th. Then we had a decarbonizing infrastructure event, which is again a virtual event. Then on March 27th, we had one more event. And this is the 6th event that we are having, C20 Policy Roundtable on Green Finance, which is organized in a hybrid mode, joining together with IMDR of Pune. And we have another 4 events coming up, one on decarbonizing transport, which is virtual on April 19th. We also have one more event on industrial decarbonization, which is virtual on April 21st. And very interestingly, we have organizing an event on circular economies for sustainable net zero transition, which is again virtual, April 26th. And to sum it all, we have a summit event on SRC, which is being organized in Sikkim, which is in a hybrid mode, April 29th and 30th. So I would request all of you to come back to these events, policy roundtables organized around net zero emissions management. There are 2 things we have done in the last couple of weeks. One is we have rolled out a CSO survey, basically to explore what is the present state of net zero emissions initiative across G20 nations. We have taken the help of 42 volunteers of Amma's organization in 42 different countries to run this, to roll out the CSO survey. CSO is basically a civil service organization. The whole C20 initiative revolves around the civil initiatives. So the G20 is basically around the governmental initiatives, but C20 gets its energy from the civil population. The second one, this is probably the most important one. We are trying to compile the best practices or the udaharans which are available today across different social organizations and what are they trying to do to promote net zero initiatives. We have seen umpteen examples how people have come together to put it into practice. So this is something which we are trying to do. And that is it from SRC. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving me a patient lesson. Thank you. We have a small video to be played from Amritapuri on SRC. The team will take over from there. SRC video.
As one family is founded upon the inherent oneness of humankind and nature. Yet the unity and balance of the world we live in has diminished due to many complex challenges. Some of the most pressing concerns are the continual rise of carbon emissions resulting in global warming, the rapid growth of the global population resulting in increased greenhouse gas emissions, unsustainable energy use, and deforestation, the acceleration of the climate crisis that is pushing vulnerable and indigenous populations further into the depths of poverty and other economic disparities. Tackling these climate change impacts calls for serious dialogues and deliberations to rightly assess the current state of affairs, gather valuable lessons from the past, and move forward with the right approach. This is more important now than ever, as we are less than a decade away from fulfilling 3 major initiatives centered towards tackling climate change. The Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, and the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals. Shrimata Amritanandamayi Devi, Chair of the C20, says,
"There is a rhythm to everything in creation, an undeniable relationship between the entire universe and every living creature within it. The universe is like a vast, interconnected network. Suppose there is a net. If it is shaken in one place, the vibration is felt throughout. Similarly, whether we are aware of it or not, all of our actions reverberate throughout creation."
Inspired by this vision, the C20 Working Group on Sustainable and Resilient Communities will showcase the importance of compassionate approaches across key thematic areas such as climate resilience and social justice, environmental sustainability, net zero emission targets, compassion-driven approaches for sustainable and resilient communities. We will work closely with civil society organizations from G20 countries to identify high-impact policy recommendations for implementation. Our working group will engage in dialogues and deliberations to come up with policy recommendations, facilitate events, workshops, and campaigns to showcase efforts by notable international CSOs, collect and review case studies of best practices or udaharans from around the world to raise collective awareness among other activities. We firmly believe that once the decision to help others with compassion is taken, it flows into acts of giving, creating a visual impact of alleviating pain and suffering, thereby creating an atmosphere of unity, harmony, and solidarity. We want to create such impactful visuals of compassion so that the circle of giving keeps expanding until no one in the world is left behind, and we realize India's vision for its G20 presidency. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one Earth, one family.
That has really set the tone for the evening, isn't it? I would request all the dignitaries, Umesh Chandra Sarangi sir, Vinod Menon sir, Chandrakant Sanjokar sir, Athole sir, and Chikha ma'am to adorn the dais. It is immense pleasure to introduce Athole sir, who is a trustee and vice chairman of Deccan Education Society. At Deccan Education Society, he heads Central Development Committee at prestigious Ferguson College and IMDR. He is company secretary by profession with practice spanning over 32 years. His extensive corporate experience and finesse enable professional management of society matters, while also ensuring continuous growth and progress of Constitutional Educational Institute in a dynamic and competitive environment. In the past, he had been president of Institute of Company Secretariats of India, ICSI, where he has also held position of chairman of Pune chapter and member of Western India Regional Council. He was public representative director on PAC Securities Limited, a subsidiary of Pune Stock Exchange, as a director of board of private limited companies. He has been a member of corporate laws of subcommittee of MCCI. We welcome you, sir, and I request Athole sir to address the gathering.
Dignitaries on the dais, We are running behind the schedule, so I would cut short my talk. On behalf of IMDR, I welcome all of you. It's a privilege for us to join hands with Amma's University. She is doing an excellent job, and I think she is respected by all of us in the country. Everybody knows in the worldwide she has established her name. So we are fortunate to join hands with her. And as a chairman of C20, she has given us an opportunity to host this program. So it's a proud moment for all of us. Let me put it like this, that in Rigved also we have been worshipping nature, Prithvi, Aap, Vayu, Tej, and we are all aware of this Panchamahabhut. So this concept of protecting nature is not new to at least India. We have Agni Sukta, we have Parjanya Sukta, Agni Mere Purohitam, Devasya Ritvijam, and there are lots of rhymes in Rigved. Even Tukaram Maharaj, those who understand Marathi, would know that Vrikshavalli Amha Soyare Vanachari. So we have been taught from our childhood that we should worship nature and protect nature. And what Amma has mentioned in her address is that she is our mother, so we should take every care of mother. In today's deliberations, I am sure we would be listening to the experts about green finance, which is a buzzword. And even as a DES, we have converted the campus of IMDR Ferguson as a green campus, and we have decided to spend about 3 crores in next couple of months on installation of solar system on virtually every rooftop, so that in whatever little way we want to contribute, so we are doing that. So all the best for the program, and I'm sure the participants online, offline would derive a lot of benefit and would know more about green finance. Thank you very much.
And sir, your words always inspire us to think beyond boundaries. And the time has arrived to introduce our esteemed panelist. I request Professor Pratik Poddar to introduce our panelist. So, Sri Umesh Chandra Sarangi, sir.
Shri Umesh Chandra Sarangi, IAS retired, has about 35 years of experience in public service and about 7.5 years experience in the corporate. He was the collector for Latur and Nashik and also worked as the Revenue Divisional Commissioner of Pune. He later became the Principal Secretary to the Chief Minister of Maharashtra before being appointed as the Chairman of NABARD. He was the advisor for Maharashtra CM on agriculture from July to October 2019. Currently, he is the Chairman of the Agribusiness Committee of NCCI Pune. He has received 7 gold medals from the Government of Maharashtra for his outstanding contribution to agricultural development in the state. I request Atambi sir to welcome Sarangi sir with a token of appreciation.
Thank you, Pratik sir. Let me take pride to introduce our next panelist, Sri Chandrasekhar Chinsorkar. He is a Director, Corporate Advisory at CS India Private Limited. Mr. Chinsorkar has more than 32 years of experience in corporate finance, capital markets, investment banking, consulting, manufacturing, and so on and so forth. Mr. Chinsorkar has successfully completed fundraising for many companies through debt and equity route. He has been involved in domestic and international roadshows for a large number of corporates in India, Asia Pacific, and the USA. He has done significant work in the area of project finance during initial phase of his career. He is a company secretary and cost management accountant, MS Finance, PG diploma in environment law, as well as a diploma in sustainable management of natural resources and nature conservation. He has been involved in electric mobility, clean tech consulting for almost 3 years plus. His current work at CS includes startup investments, startup mentoring, evaluation, and sustainable business development. We welcome you, sir. Now I request Shri Ature sir to felicitate Mr. Chandrasekhar Chinsorkar.
Joining us virtually is Ms. Deepthi George, Deputy Executive Director and Head of Strategy from Dwara Research. Deepthi leads Dwara Research thinking on regulatory and policy themes in financial and banking systems. Her work so far has been motivated by the objective of making financial services accessible and truly useful to Indian low-income households and small businesses. Her areas of research and advocacy cover institutional and distribution design of retail and wholesale financial services, systemic risk and consumer protection, and institutional conduct in Indian and other jurisdictions. She has contributed to various formal engagements with financial sector regulators in India and international coalitions on financial systems and consumer protection. We welcome you, ma'am.
Now let me introduce Professor Vinod Menon, sir. Professor N. Vinod Chandra Menon is an alumnus of Kerala University and Jawaharlal Nehru University, JNU, Delhi. He has got more than 36 years of work experience with a quarter century of experience in disaster risk education, climate change adaptation and public policy analysis at national, regional and global levels. He has worked as professor for disaster management in Yashwantrao Savan Academy of Development Administration, or all as we know as Yashida. We are delighted to have you, sir. He is a former UN staff member with field of emergency preparedness and response. He was nominated by Prime Minister of India as one of the founder members of National Disaster Management Authority, or we also know as NDMA, with the status of Union Minister in Government of India in 2005. He has served in his capacity from 2005 to 2010. He has been invited to address several international conferences, India and abroad. He has published extremely highly reputed journals, and he is the president of Radar India and regional director of Asia of the International Emergency Management Society, Oslo and Brussels, and is a member of several advisory boards and governing bodies. He is an adjunct professor and advisor to Amrita School of Sustainable Development at Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham. We are really delighted to have you among us, sir. Thank you so much. Now I request Attorney sir to felicitate Professor Menon with a token of appreciation. Thank you so much, sir. We request Professor Menon to moderate this panel discussion. We request Shikhajan ma'am and Atole sir to be amongst the audience. We will just make a half sentence.
It's a great pleasure for me to be among all of you this evening. It's more like a homecoming for me because I had spent about 18 years in Pune from 1986 to 2002, and then in 2002 I went to Delhi to join the UN in charge of emergency preparedness and response, and I coordinated the response for the tsunami in 2004 December, and in 2005 I was nominated by the Prime Minister to be one of the founder members of the National Disaster Management Authority. So I resigned from the UN and joined the Government of India to establish the National Disaster Management Authority. And from 2005 to 2010, we helped in basically coordinating and facilitating the setting up of the state disaster management authorities in all the states and union territories, and also the district disaster management authorities in all the districts in different states and union territories of India. Sri Umesh Sarangi is a very old dear friend with whom we have had very close association when I was in Yashoda as one of the faculty members, and we worked very closely in many disasters. When the government of Maharashtra helped Gujarat I think it's a great pleasure and privilege for me to be on this panel along with very distinguished people like Sri Mahesh Athwale Sahab, who is the Vice Chairman of the Deccan Educational Society, Dr. Shikha Jain, the Director of IMDR, Dr. Shilpa Kulkarni, the Professor in charge of many of the events, and she is actually anchoring this event with IMDR, and other colleagues, and also Dr. Muralikrishnan from Amrita University, who is here with us, and all the other colleagues who are actually joining us virtually online from different parts of the country and also from different countries around the world. This is actually being live streamed on different social media platforms, and so we will also be having people joining in and also sending us questions and interacting with us. In terms of this opportunity actually on the green finance, we know that climate is changing, and the impact of climate change has been actually felt in many ways. It is getting manifested. We see the sea level rise, we see global warming, we see the glacier melting, and we see the temperature changing. Even though I am not sure whether we are all standing and sitting together in this room, in this at the same time, we are also sweating in the evening, and we find that the change in temperature, and that is also being felt now, that the temperature is changing so much that we are seeing different ways by which it's impacting people. It's impacting people so much that in Kerala they say that the people are advised not to be working in the fields in the afternoon, and then there are also even school classrooms. People are advised, children are advised, and teachers are advised not to have classes in the afternoons. So in terms of the role which we are all trying to do in the G20 and the civil society C20, I think it's very important that we address some of these concerns, because we know that the targets which we have in front of us are actually extremely ambitious and also very aspirational. We do not really know what is going to be the future in terms of the biodiversity which we are seeing around us. We are seeing the extinction of species, and we are also not sure what is going to be the future of humanity in terms of what is actually happening around us. And I'm not being a doomsday person who is actually talking about the disasters, but having worked in disasters, both disasters, climate change induced hydrometeorological disasters in many parts of the world, and also in conflict situations, we find that actually we all need to work together. Otherwise, we are part of the problem. If we are part of the solution, and that's why I feel very happy that we have all been given saplings as souvenirs for this event, and we need to actually do this. And on 15th of this month, it is the Vishu. It's a very auspicious festival in Kerala, but instead of the Vishu Kainitam, Amma has said that we should actually be all distributing saplings it is a Vishu Tainitam, which means giving away saplings to younger generation to basically instill the role of conservation of environment. So I think these are some of the issues which we are actually trying to do, whether we are looking at electric vehicles, whether we are looking at the transition to solar, and what Mr. Atwale mentioned, that you are going to be investing in solar panels for solar energy is actually something which is extremely important. And we feel that as a policy, we need to be investing in roof water harvesting, we need to be investing in solar panels, we need to be looking at alternatives which are sustainable for resilient communities. I'm very grateful. These are very brief remarks which I would like to make, and I'm very happy that we have a very distinguished panel. And I would request now Mr. Umesh Sarangi, the former chairman of NABARD and a very distinguished administrator with decades of experience in the field of disaster management, also climate change adaptation, as the Secretary and Additional Chief Secretary of Agriculture in the Government of Maharashtra, and currently now on the boards of many organizations. I would request him to kindly make his remarks.
Mr. Atwale, Mr. Chincholikar, my friend Dr. Vinod Menon, Madam Sikha Jain, and friends. I am indeed very happy to be a part of this conference discussing issues that are very prominent before G20. And this is a group supposed to be provide citizens' view on climate change, its impact, and what all we are doing, whether it's enough or not, what more needs to be done, etc. I am reminded of a book I read called One Straw Revolution. It was written by a Japanese microbiology professor called Masanobu Fukuoka. Now, he said, what does the modern science do? The modern science says, we must read more, we must read more. Now, nature has given you eyes to see and read. So, if you read 4 hours, 6 hours a day, no problem. But you say, no, I want to read more, I want to acquire more knowledge in less time. So, you read 12 hours a day. Now, the muscles get tired, and in few days you have eye problem. So, you are not able to read as well, but your aspiration doesn't die, you want to read more. So then you do research, how can I see better? And then discover specs. And then with specs you are able to read better. Now you create a problem and then research to find solution. Why do you create a problem at all? Now nature has enough to meet our need. Nature cannot afford to meet our need. So the world we live on today is the world of greed. We have not been able to, we will not be able to sustain this greed forever. The impact of our greed is now showing up in terms of excessive exploitation of natural resources and its impact on environment, on climate, on weather, everywhere, all the world over. I do it at my home, so your home will not be affected. No, it's not that way. America lives a very cozy life, so India is not affected. No, it's not that way. Higher carbon emission by any country in the world will affect all countries of the world, each individual citizen. So we have now come to a situation, maybe we needed to act even much earlier, but that heads of government of all countries became conscious. 194 countries came together, thought of actions to arrest and then to reverse the changes that are taking place on climate and threatening endangering the very survival of humanity, the planet itself. So actions are required, actions have started, but there is still a lot more to be done. Now, I am very happy to tell you today that when I was chairman NABARD, I had sent a proposal in 2009 to government. Let there be a climate adaptation fund and let NABARD be in charge of executing programs that helps implement actions that are required to negate the impact of changes that are taking place because of all that we are doing now. And imagine initially there was an adaptation fund, then there was the National Adaptation Fund on Climate Change in 2012, and then there is a Green Climate Fund. All these funds put together, around 1,853 crores have been sanctioned, and 40 projects are on the implementation all over the through NABARD. NABARD is the national implementing entity. But okay, that's very fine. We have made a beginning somewhere, and we'll move ahead. Lot more to be done. No problem. Now, in 1994, when the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change started, since then, all countries meet together what is called Conference of Parties, COP. Now, in 2018, at Glasgow, India said that we will reduce carbon emission by 1 billion tons by 2030 and will become carbon net zero by 2070. Now, from that if you see, International Financial Corporation made an estimate that to achieve this target between 2018 and 2030, India will require $3.1 trillion. $3.1 trillion. Now, $3.1 trillion is our current GDP, India's current GDP. So we are supposed to spend our current GDP in 12 years only on climate action. Now, would that be possible? The states will put their effort, the central will put its effort, and under the climate support action from developed countries, we will get funds. But still, organizing this kind of fund looks a very difficult possibility. Now, that is one. Second, let us say for a while, if such funds would be available, they have to get translated into action on the ground in village 1, in village 2, in village 3, in village 4, in 7 lakh villages in India. If India had to achieve this net carbon emission zero by 2070, or reduce carbon dioxide emission or greenhouse gas emission. Now today we are 7th in terms of global climate risk index, 7th in the world, and we are 3rd in the world in terms of greenhouse emission, greenhouse gas emission. USA, China, and then India. So it's a huge objective for us. Looks very difficult to achieve in the time frame that has been prescribed, and will require not only funds, even if funds become available, translating it into action on the ground will be difficult. Now, why we are doing all this? We want sustainability. Whatever is happening in the world, we do agriculture, we do industrial production, etc., all should happen on a sustainable basis, and so that we are able to harness our natural resource and their benefits for the benefit of the mankind on a sustainable basis. What is sustainability? Now, sustainability is defined as ability of a system to give you a defined level of performance with potential to enhance it if required, without compromising the basic ecological integrity of the system. Now, are we doing that? We have been successful in past to give you a defined level of performance. we got what we wanted, with potential to enhance. So far we have been able to enhance it. But tomorrow, or by tomorrow, today itself, we see that productivity is becoming stagnant. We are not able to move ahead. Somewhere we have started declining. And if that happens, then we will not say our production system, our agriculture is sustainable. But the population has not yet reached net zero, where 2 people produce 2 people and the population remains stagnant. This will take years to reach, maybe 2050. So till then our requirement will increase, we need to produce more. If production becomes stagnant, we go back on the radar, and how do we feed the increasing person that India will have in ahead. Today we are self-sufficient, we are doing absolutely fine, we have surplus, we are able to import fine. So will the future agriculture for India and for the rest of the world be sustainable? Now let's take example for one country. Now India as a whole has created, we have the largest area under irrigation in the world for any country. Largest area under irrigation. And in Maharashtra, we have 20% area under irrigation. For a country as a whole, we have 40%. For Maharashtra, we have 20%. Now, TERI has done a study for Maharashtra. Now, they say that in next 30-40 years, there will be significant change in climate, weather, and rainfall. Whether it is cumulative effect of climate over a long period of time, and we say effect of weather over a long period of time, we call it climate. Now, the rainfall will increase as we go from Kolhapur to Nandurbar by 10 to 40%. 10 to 40%. All of you, including me, will say, oh, very good. We'll get more rainfall. Maharashtra is deficient in rainfall. Very good. But let's hear what they tell again. It will come in intense spells. Intense spells. There will be more gaps in monsoon. So, if you are getting the monsoon that you are getting today, if you are getting in, say, 50 different spells, you have 30 different spells. Okay? So, fewer spells, more intense, bigger gaps. Bigger gaps. When there is bigger gaps in monsoon, how do you support the crop? Protective irrigation. Otherwise the crop will go, you will miss the crop. Kharif is gone. And Rabi, you don't have much. Unless you are able to harness all these intense showers in dams. So if this is what is going to happen, who are affected most? Now the rain-fed area are affected. Today in India, 86% of the farmers are small and marginal. They are small and marginal. Means they have less than 5 acres of land. And marginal among them is more than small. Small is between 2.5 to 5 and marginal is less than 2.5. Their number is more. So, these are the poor people of India, poor farmers of India. And they mostly are in rain-fed region. And if rain-fed region, rain plays truant, the way I said, then what happens to them? What happens to their livelihood? So this is a question that should bother all of us, and more so in Maharashtra, because Maharashtra has 80% area under rain-fed. Okay, so this is something which we need to think about. Now, how do we, when climate changes, when you have intense showers, what will happen? There is more overground runoff than underground runoff. Every rainfall that comes, part of it goes into the ground and part of it is flowed over the ground. Now if there is a rim barish, 80% of it will go to the ground. But if there is an intense shower, 80% will go flow down. When it flows down, it goes with speed and carries the soil. So there will be very huge soil erosion. The kind of spectre that we are going to have next 20-30 years, And soil, 1 inch soil takes 200 years to be made. 200 years. And one shower, intense shower, will take it to the sea. So how do we prevent erosion? How do we manage water? We are drawing water. The water in the deeper layers of the soil are like the ornaments of a lady who keeps it inside the sindoor very carefully, because when I have a bad time, this will come to my rescue. Similarly, this water, if at all we ever face a bad time, this water which is deeper in deeper aquifers at 1000 feet, 700 feet will come to our rescue. But we have now borewells which go to 1000 feet to harness that water. Then who will come to our rescue? So there has to be a balance between groundwater exploitation and groundwater storage. You extract only as much as you can recharge. That means your recharge effort has to be intense. That should be under the climate action plan. Every state has a state climate action plan. So how to increase recharge and how to put a limit on exploitation, so that the equation between groundwater table and our level of exploitation doesn't mismatch. Okay, that is very important to ensure. Now this requires integrated soil and water conservation measures on watershed basis. Now you imagine NABARD through GTZ of Germany implemented a number of watershed development programs in various villages, and they have given best of results. Villages which are 200 wells going dry for 6 months in a year have enough water to draw 24 hours a day, 200 wells. The village which didn't have even 2 TVs had 2 TVs in every house now, because they did watershed development. They said, we will recharge fast and then draw later. Now this action has to take it. I said, okay, this happened in Karwanchi in Jalna district. This happened in Adgaon in Aurangabad district. This happened in Narayan Sindhi, another village. So, but this has to happen in 45,000 villages of Maharashtra. Now this action is gigantic. It will take lot more time, lot more effort, lot more money. And in this whole thing, we have to prepare water budget for every village, water governance for every village. Unless that kind of action are initiated, these are all within our competence, state of government of Maharashtra competence, government of India's competence. Money may not be within our competence, but actions are within our competence, provided we make a very clear-cut action list, how to proceed about it, and make it, implement it in a mission mode to achieve what we intend to achieve. Now, I will give an example. Women's participation in water management, in water governance, in water protection, or in ensuring that more water goes to the ground. Water table is not disturbed. Now, women can do a lot, because who is most affected if water is not there? She has to go 2 kilometers and move to one river and walk back. So she would be sensitized very easily. And if you give him the power, to do this, she will participate actively in the village water governance issues and see that the water balance of the village is not disturbed. And this has to happen every village. So participatory management of watershed development program in every village with clear-cut water budgeting. And water budgeting means you allot. We have this much water, you can't get more than that. How much liter I will use for drinking, how much time, should I permit sugar, should I permit banana? No. So those decisions have to be taken at village level. So when they implement as a unit, then only there is a chance for success, and that will, then they will plant more trees, that will reduce carbon emission. Okay. So this has to be done very large scale, all over the country, in lots of villages, if we see some chance to become carbon neutral. So this is a very big subject, difficult to address in 15 minutes, but I just try to give you an idea of the enormity of the job in our hand if we want to arrest and reverse back in the direction we want to go back. Thank you.
May I now request Mr. Chandrasekhar Chinchwalkar to kindly make his intervention. Thank you. We will be taking up the questions after the presentations are over. I'm sure there will be more questions. Screen shaker on? Okay, I'll just convert it.
Good evening all. Professor Vinod Menon, Dr. Sarangi, Ms. Dipti George who has joined us online, Professor Athole, Dr. Shikha Jain, faculty members and dear friends. The whole world is going through a solid rigmarole in terms of what needs to be done, what should be the priority, and whether the money is available, what are the kind of investments that are required, what should be done first, what should be done second. In terms of the Paris Agreement and the commitments which were done in 2015, unfortunately not a lot of things are actually coming forward. The developed countries who contribute significantly to emissions, like China 30%, then US 13%, and India is at 6%. So out of 33 gigatons of carbon emissions globally, maybe which has now increased to 36 or 37 gigatons, India only contributes 6% of that, which is around 2 gigatons. So if you divide that by the population of 140 crores, per capita emissions are significantly lower. So if you take the US, which is double the size of India in terms of emissions and 1/4 the size of population, you can imagine they are at 7-8 times than what we have today in terms of, and they are coming forward to teaching us that you should reduce your emissions. It's the same way that countries are telling us, the Europeans are buying Russian oil and they are telling us not to buy the Russian oil, right? Now we are fortunate that Japan has actually joined that consortium of trying to break the US monopoly in terms of oil buying, and now started buying the Russian oil. So I think thanks to the political will that as Professor Rubini said recently, that rupee is the next dollar in the making. So Indian currency will probably be the next reserve currency for the world to really see where we stand in terms of the real power or purchasing power of rupee as probably we'll see it in the next decade or so. So I have been associated with environment, CSR. I was, Mr. Athole has been the chairman or president of the Institute of Company Secretaries. I have been on to 2 years on the committee of CSR. So we advised, a lot of things in terms of how things can be improved. The government has taken some of these suggestions very positively, but one very important suggestion, because Professor Menon is here, again I would like to reiterate, which was suggested in 2017-18, but it has still not been taken very seriously, is that I said listed companies declare results on a corporate basis, right? Quarterly basis. So why can't you even do CSR declarations on a quarterly basis? So maybe sir can take it up as a independent director of HDFC Bank And this was a very important suggestion that you actually budget for CSR, right, every year. And then there are teams which actually execute CSR. So if you are declaring results on a quarterly basis, why can't you even declare what activities, you probably announce that I have done this activity or that activity, but if my budget for CSR is 10 crores, whether I have spent that 2.5 crores in the first quarter or no, is a very important milestone for, that suggestion has not really been even implemented today. Because I can see possibly significant resistance from corporate in implementing this, because most of the activities actually happen in the third or fourth quarter. So this is one area where, a significant amount of improvement is required in terms of are we realistic in terms of presenting ourselves? Not really. I mean, this is what is actually required from the corporate side. Fortunately, we have now the, most of you would be aware, but let me reiterate for the, benefit of the audience, that India has come out with BRSR guidelines, that is Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting. And, we are also going to start with carbon markets. So in my previous company, I had the opportunity along with the chairman to present both to Niti Aayog and to Deputy Secretary PMO on why India needs carbon markets. Fortunately, that policy has been accepted. 7-8 corporates were actually invited to present to Niti Aayog when Mr. Rajiv Kumar was the vice chairman, and then to Dr. Hardik Shah as Deputy Secretary PMO. So that has actually become a bill now, and from June onwards, July onwards, we are going to see carbon market being operational. The policy is actually out. Comments have to be given on the policy by 14th of April. So a lot of you can download the policy and give your comments in terms of how India should actually operate the carbon market. So, you hear about renewable energy certificates, you hear about e-certs. All this is now hopefully in the next 1 year get merged with CCC, which is carbon credit certificates in the coming days. So people who are, say, doing bamboo plantation or energy cane plantation or, a lot of carbon emission reduction practices, they will be issued CERs, carbon emission reduction certificates, and those will actually get traded on the exchange in the coming days. So, I mean, before I really begin the topic on green financing, somebody like Walmart, just for example, Walmart needs 100 billion tons of carbon mitigation. So you can imagine the kind of requirement we can have. Somebody like Microsoft requires 20-25 billion tons of carbon emission, reduction, because I've done this work in the exercise in the previous company, so I'm aware about the numbers. Maybe percentage-wise the numbers are here or there, but the real fact is the numbers are huge. It is unimaginable in terms of what has been missed out, and that's what we need to really address in terms of the real need for the future. And as Professor Sarangi said, so much of emphasis has been given on decarbonization. We require $3 trillion by 2030. For 2070, India requires $10 trillion. So, which is hopefully, by 2047, as people are predicting, we should be a $27 trillion economy. Hopefully, as the numbers speak, and hopefully we should be able to generate that much of cash flow with the real focus of government on being an export-led economy rather than being a import-driven economy, which is currently we are. So moving on to green finance. So I'm trying to present some 5-6 slides on what is actually happening, and I'll try to explain point-wise scenario. So when we talk about say battery electric vehicles, Professor Menon mentioned about, or I think the previous introduction mentioned about decarbonization. So try to understand what really is needed in the country. So when we talk about decarbonization, 80% is industrial decarbonization, 20% is mobility-based decarbonization. So when we talk about 80% industrial decarbonization, 30, 35, 40% actually comes from energy-based decarbonization. So like, say a manufacturing company, a cement company or a steel company, 35 to 40% is actually because of the energy that we consume, which is basically whether it is thermal power or, any other kind of power, which is not renewable in nature. So that needs to be, currently mitigated. 35 to 40% actually comes from the process-related mitigations. Say when we talk about cement, the major process in cement is calcium carbonate, refining, burning, all that stuff. When you talk about steel, it is, melting of iron ore and going ahead and things like that. So changing of the blast furnace design or whatever, which is not so easy because that requires huge capex, which is, industry will do it. I mean, somebody like Tata Steel will definitely do, ensure that they produce something like, which will be a carbon neutral steel or green steel in the coming days. Just to add to what I said just now, where the world is actually moving, Europe or especially Germany has come out with a regulation which talks about 10% of the auto components imported in their country will be produced from green steel by October 2023. So that is what the target they have already kept. And if Germany has set the target, obviously it will flow to entire Europe. And by 2027 or 2025 or 2026, maybe 25 to 30% or 40% of the imports that are coming to European Union only from auto components or steel will have to be compulsorily made from green steel. So you can imagine the kind of money that is required to be, put into the system. So this is one very interesting factor and development. So when we talk about actually electric vehicles, India has roughly 33 crore vehicles as of now. 33 crore vehicles. You can go and check the numbers on Vahana site. Numbers will be here of 5% here or there. Out of 33 crores, roughly 75% are two-wheelers. Then around 6 to 7 crores are passenger cars. 1 crore would be trucks, and then balance three-wheelers, other mini trucks or whatever. So if you just talk about mitigation of 10% of this, even if you talk about say two-wheeler mitigation, from current level of 24-25 crore vehicles, if you are supposed to go to say 30 crore vehicles by 2030, and 10% of that has to be mitigated through electric vehicles, we are talking about 3 crore vehicles on roads which needs to be electrified. So 3 crore vehicles at an average 2.5 to 3 kilowatt hour battery, you can imagine the requirement for batteries in the coming days only from a two-wheeler perspective. A typical car requires 30 to 35 kilowatt hour battery, and we are talking about 7 crore vehicles on the roads right now. Maybe they will become 8 or 9 crores by 2030, and say 20% or 15% of that to be mitigated through. So you can imagine the kind of requirement for renewable energy in the coming days and what kind of money or financing is required for this sector to really emerge, in the coming days. So this is going to be a humongous requirement. We are not even talking about, batteries, battery chemistry, what are the, battery chemistry chemicals that are required. India is talking about $1 trillion economy in semiconductors by 2027, and we are fortunate that we have somebody like Ashwini Vaishnav who's leading this initiative. He's an MTech from IIT Kanpur, MBA from Harvard. Being a minister, he has that flair of how things can be implemented faster. We have Mr. Gadkari who talks, keeps doing fantastic work in terms of implementation of road policies. So when you talk about electric vehicles, this is the current scenario. So you can imagine the kind of money that is required. Today, banks are not really, I should say, up to date in terms of financing even large number of fleets because they don't understand electric vehicles. So this is the level of change in terms of education that is required in the country, because I am privy to a transaction in Bangalore where NBFCs came and gave a quote for a green 250 vehicle fleet, and they realized that the manufacturer is not able to give the kind of warranties and guarantees that they require on the books for them to really go ahead and finance. So this is a very troublesome scenario. People will fund me, people will fund you, people will fund you, because we have a strong personal balance sheet. But when it comes to fleet, for a corporate entity, it is not easy because you don't have those performance parameters. Because if I am buying a car and my EMI is 30,000 rupees, I will never default, right? Whether the vehicle runs or not, whether it is of any use to me or not, I will not default. But a corporate, if the vehicle doesn't run, from where he is going to get the money? These are all issues and challenges. Then we talk about new age batteries, lithium, sodium ion, supercapacitors, their entire battery supply chain. So I talked about, I'm actually working on a transaction for, doing a fundraise for a lithium ion supply chain. We call it, the product is called as N-methyl parodidyne. which actually goes into binding of cathode. So I'm aware what are the issues, challenges. We don't even have technocrats and experts who can actually solve those issues and problems. So it's not easy to move ahead with decarbonization or net zero or whatever we call it. So these are the challenges that we are facing. When we talk about ethanol, okay, government has given a target of 20% mixing of ethanol by 2025. But are we going to burn all the biomass? Is the biomass has only end use in terms of ethanol? Can the biomass not be used for production of hydrogen? Because the calorific value of hydrogen is 3 times that of higher than the diesel. So what is the calorific value of ethanol? What is the calorific value of hydrogen? So these are all issues and challenges which we need to address. Only 2 minutes. I was given 15 minutes to speak. Then we talk about solar and wind energy. We require around 20 lakh crores of capital funding for this. It's not going to be easy. Then we have smaller modular reactors which are going to come up. And then hydrogen we are talking about, government has come out with a policy, production linked incentive scheme for hydrogen. Then what are the focus areas which needs to be looked into? Initial capex, cost reduction, funding mix, understanding of the banking system needs to improve, and skill development. These are all important areas. Then existing sources, national coal cess, priority sector by banks, insurance sector funding, green bonds, tax-free bonds, infrastructure bonds, structure funding. What could be the new ways? Masala bonds, because some of the Indian companies have gone ahead and done some fundraising overseas in terms of masala bonds, which are basically rupee denominated bonds. So there is no foreign currency risk there. Then we talk about sustainability linked bond. Ultratech Cement has actually raised $400 million. They have kept some target that if they achieve this particular sustainability, their interest rate will be say 1% lower. If they don't achieve, they will pay 1% higher interest rate. Then we talk about InvITs, where InvITs is something which Mr. Gadkari keeps talking about, and government NHI has actually raised significant amount of money from InvITs. And it's like, instead of all of us putting money in fixed deposit at 5 or 6% or 7%, InvITs can actually give you 9 or 10% or 11% sort of a return. And, it is unit linked, it is tax free. So that is something which can, and direct crowdfunding is something that can, happen over a period of time. So why InvITs, these are the benefits, why InvITs are required. So this can actually become, sir, a very, very important parameter or, source of raising money for government as well as for private sector. And there are 2 listed InvITs in the country, and there are 17, 18 unlisted InvITs in the country. So this is going to be a significant area in terms of fundraising. So, and as you can see, InvIT must distribute 90% of its, income to unit holders. So if as an InvIT manager, if I am earning 12-13%, I have to keep 10% for my expenses. Balance I have to compulsorily distribute. So, people like us will, instead of earning 6-7%, we probably, and energy is an area where, we need not worry about, because the use is increasing on a day-to-day basis. So what are the opportunities on hand? Huge hydrogen export opportunity. Government is talking about 5 million metric tons of export of hydrogen. Then replacement of imported crude, creation of large national economy, large employment, large funding possibility opportunities, speed of GDP acceleration, reduce significant emissions, technological excellence. And we are fortunate that we are now seeing a government where at least they are focused in terms of execution and implementation also, because now they have announced so many schemes. So people have to actually work on the ground to get the benefits. New age leadership by India, consistent private equity and banking returns. This is something because the use of energy is from one source to another source. The transition will keep happening, and you will probably need significant amount of funding in these coming years. Sustainable manufacturing and circular economy. And as we see, we are able to leave the planet for the next generation as a sustainable planet. And by 2047, when we talk about $27 trillion economy, 50 to 55% of this can actually come from green finance, which is the current ratio as far as GDP to banking system deposits is concerned. So, just to end, we are the first generation to feel the effect of climate change, and the last generation who can do something about it. This is a famous statement by Barack Obama. And the yellow one is what I keep speaking at various conferences, what has gone wrong in the last 100 years needs to be corrected in the next 25 to 30 years. So we need to run 3 times faster. So I don't know whether we really have the energy for running that 3 times faster, but this is something which can possibly help us to become faster, go towards faster net zero. And it is a very, very important parameter that we leave something better for our children in the coming days. So I'll end with this. Thank you so much G20, C20 and as well as IMDR and Amrita Vishwavidyapitam for giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chandrasekhar Chinjolkar. This is an extremely thought-provoking presentation. I'm sure that there will be many questions. We will actually take up some of these questions during the interactions in the open house. I would now request Ms. Deepthi George to join us and then kindly make her intervention. Has Deepthi been introduced? Has she been introduced? Yes, she's there. Yes. Thank you. You're muted. You're muted. Can you try again? Deepthi, can you try again? She can hear me. Hello, Deepthi, can you hear us? Okay. Are you able to unmute yourself? Okay.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay. Great. Namaste everybody. Thank you very much. Melan sir, is it good? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. I'm just going to share my screen. Yeah. Okay. So I follow, I think, speakers, very thought-provoking, very charged with energy. Say what we need to do in this space. I'm going to take a slight detour. I know that while the agenda mentions sort of green finance in relation to what regulators need to do, I'm going to speak a little bit about sort of challenges in formalizing credit for the purpose of livelihoods, right? We're talking of low-income households. But before that, I'll also maybe just very briefly touch upon who I'm representing. So I'm actually convener for the there's a special committee on financial issues set up within the C20, and So I'll probably spend a minute just talking about what are the themes of interest there. I'll talk again a minute about just talking about the organization that I represent, Dwala Research, the kinds of issues that we look out for. And then within that context, why is this such an important theme for us to consider under this working group, which is on sustainable and resilient livelihoods, right? So the Special Committee on Financial Issues has is sort of this list of members with representation from the previous presidencies and the future presidencies, as well as specific members from India. While we don't become very specific, issues that are unique to working group under this committee, we do take a coverage of issues. These are in relation to sovereign debt, financing, and funding requirements for CSOs, fair taxation, because taxation is an important theme to just helping sovereigns create the pathway for the fiscal space that is needed for sustainability financing, and also the theme of household debt. I won't go into each of these, but I'll just quickly move to who we are and who Dwala Research is, because I work there and I've been focused on low-income households specifically. So we are an independent, non-partisan, not-for-profit policy research institution based in India. We really, our identity is that we believe we are the voice of low-income households and enterprises. Why is this important? Because low-income households in fact form about the first maybe 2 to 3 quintiles of our country's population. And in India, it's about first 2 to 3 quintiles. And then there's also more work which indicates that, in fact, much larger parts of the population actually move in and out of the poverty line at different parts of the year and for different longer or shorter periods of time. So it's very important for us to consider low-income households and household-specific enterprises. We advocate for their financial well-being. We are system-level thinkers. In terms of action, we undertake sort of foundational thinking in the domains of financial inclusion and social protection. And this work unfolds over long periods of time. But we also do short-term projects with policymakers, regulators, and practitioners, depending on we envision a world in which every low-income household and enterprise has complete access to suitable financial services and social security through a range of channels that enable them to use services securely and confidently. So we have 4 sort of policy initiatives. I won't go into each of them, but really it cuts across financial systems design, future of finance, which is really the whole digitization and digitalization trends or revolution that's disrupting financial services, and what does this mean for consumers of finance, right, including low-income households. What are the new risks that they are being exposed to? What are the past risks which are now being exacerbated? Household finance is a third theme, where we try to understand how do low-income households make financial decisions, how are their financial lives shaping, how are they interacting or intersecting with the financial system, as well as other parts, as it finally shows up as financial well-being or the lack of well-being. The Social Protection Initiative focuses on the role of governments as well as markets in providing protection for vulnerable populations. Vulnerabilities could be manifesting in many ways. But here again, there is a role for both markets as well as the governments to support low-income households and enterprises. So we run, we are a research partner of choice for. In the past, we have worked for the Reserve Bank of India, for SEBI as well as the pension regulator, and done some work for Ministry of Finance. But really, especially when it comes to low-income households, we do for data. So, why would financial lives of low-income households matter, right? They are very distinct and different from others, mass market or higher income, middle income, etc. They typically have illiquid and indivisible assets. right? We're talking of people who have land and house, but maybe they have no income at all. Or the income streams are very small. They have no risk absorption capacity. Their employment, there is a fair amount of sort of contractual short-term nature to their employment opportunities, and there's a lot of seasonality. I'm sure Mr. Faragi would, I think he did mention something of these lines. There is fixed outflows which are known for the household, but they're also prone to a lot of exogenous shocks. And these shocks are in a way discussed and debated, throughout all of the sort of engagements that the SRC group is working on. They also carry a lot of formal and informal liabilities, while they're also dealing with sort of volatile income streams, right? So what can the financial system do for them? We have known the financial system to offer these sort of very broadly 4 buckets, which is really let's start with credit, insurance, investment, and retirement, right? So for credit, what is the purpose? Credit is meant to offer cash flow management opportunities and to increase the sort of capacity for livelihoods generation capacity as well as business. This could be farming, this could be other kinds of activities, trading, the corollary to that is really investment, which is that how can the financial system help move funds or savings or monies for low-income households across time and across the states of the world. And they need to be uncorrelated with the risks of the local economy, right? Because it needs to meet a spectrum of long-term goals that households will have aspirations for themselves. Insurance is to cover and protect from the financial burden of shocks and unforeseeable events, whereas retirement is an income security and consumption smoothing during old age. It's very much an individualistic kind of approach. We are thinking of old age as being sort of separate from the household, but nevertheless it's an important angle through which the financial system can support. So, so I think I want to, for today, I'm just not very quickly about just one big important clarity, which is so important and so entrenched, and yet we haven't really thought about this angle in terms of a source for distress and irresilience for low-income households, right? This is in relation to what used to be creditworthiness, right? So creditworthiness is essentially having enough money for lenders to be willing to lend you more money, right? And then in the case of low-income households, credit decisioning continues to be an inexact science. While typically, approaches have been to say, okay, are you credit worthy? Do you have enough assets? Do you have enough income? There is also this angle of the ability to pay, ability to repay, and there are many ways, proxies, etc., that are used in order to sort of proxy for this ability to repay. However, it remains fairly useless simply because of the nature of the financialized low-income households, right? So, if we were to look at just how credit has helped households and enterprises, right, in their own for managing their own lives. Typically, it's been, and this is in a way applicable to, I would say, to any developing country context, right? When there is credit that's available to individuals, typically individuals, you rely on sort of collateral or their own labor. And sort of money coming from other parts of the household to kind of make the repayment. When it comes to enterprises, there is ring fencing between the household's cash flows as well as the enterprise's cash flows. But many times that ring fencing doesn't happen for, say, 99% of enterprises in the country, because they are household embedded enterprises, right? They are not ring fenced, they are not incorporated as companies, they are sole proprietors. Then I think lenders simply also approach the whole risk management, credit risk management, to say what are those kinds of risks that are idiosyncratic, that is very specific to the household or the local economy, or to the individual, that I can in a way solve for, or I can protect for, or I can diversify away, versus sort of systematic risks which are inherent in the market which I cannot diversify out, right? And this varies depending on how much concentrated assets or portfolio am I holding on my books as a lender, so of debt between households, or say for example in a self-help group model, microfinance, you would see that kind of schooling happening, right? Because households are in a way helping each other out. But the same thing happens at a much higher level. So, for example, when it comes to the insurance markets, again, we see the same principle of the schooling sort of happening. Now, this is typically conventional finance, or the way in which financial systems have been trying to support sort of households and enterprises. What is happening is that, given all of the given all of the emergent, I mean, I would say emergent, I think a lot of the risks were already known, and a lot of them are modelable. But we also have situations where nature-related risks, climate risks as well as health risks are now becoming increasingly prominent and becoming much more difficult to model. Like how our previous speaker was talking about how the banking system is not yet there in terms of financing, say, for example, sort of technologies for green finance, right? Because nor are sort of manufacturers being able to provide the kind of support and warranties that are needed for financiers to enter the picture and underwrite some of that. So, so there is this whole situation where human risks are emerging, and many of them we don't even know what the distributions might look like. So there is this need for data to come in, but all of this is going to take some time. And concerted energy and that whole marathon dodging at 4 times the speed that he talked about. But when we think of households and their resilience, there is a situation where common credit contracts become much more easier to obtain and access, and it becomes a situation where, because many of these risks weren't modeled for or couldn't be thought for, neither was it possible for borrowers to figure this out, neither was it possible for lenders to figure it out, neither was it possible for even governments to manage, right? So we have situations like that. Of course, pandemic is one example, but we have climate crises, examples to kind of skim across, right, history. So, and we do have a situation where households experience distress. So it's not just financial distress or health distress, but it is multidimensional because it has impacts on one's ability to rely on your livelihoods, one's ability to plan for the future, plan for your children, and that continues. So, and there is also this element where when you're thinking of livelihoods, failure to repay debt is again multidimensional. How does society itself treat that failure? Has an impact, right? Certain societies are very open to people in their entrepreneurial ventures, whereas many others aren't. And that adds to the whole, given the fact that credit becomes so much more easier to obtain for the purpose of managing those livelihoods. This is another important dimension to consider. So it's in this context, I don't know if I have too much time. Maybe I can skip the cases, but there are 2 interesting cases which I thought might be useful. Mehnat, do you think I have maybe 3 minutes?
Yeah, sure. I think you should take the next 3 minutes to conclude. Hello?
Okay, I'm here.
Yeah, I think you should take another few minutes to conclude. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just keep the case. In fact, the case is really about someone who had multiple issues, right? Both within the family, health-wise, health shocks which become chronic in nature, as well as the fact that there are multiple loans that she's trying to repay. While lenders have been very sympathetic and helping her manage this by making sure she's able to pay whatever small amount she has. This began with the pandemic, but it is continuing effects, and that's going to continue for a while. The question to ask is, it's not possible for her to continue repaying and reach a point where she actually finishes or completes all the repayment, right? So what do we do in that kind of situation? And her chronic health issues are expensive, and so there is the role for health insurance markets. If they aren't deep enough, liquid enough, what do we do? So, so I just want to kind of end by saying that there is a need for a humane mechanism for debt, for discharging debt. Typically, the language that is used in the legislative side of things is personal insolvency, but it is so embedded, the idea of debt discharge is so embedded also within the community, within our sort of cultural ethos, that it is important to kind of do a very careful job of how this needs to be designed. In a way, that is important. That's an important theme from the resilience aspect of it. Because we do want to, one important part of resilience is also dignity, right? The dignity of the responsibility of the individual that gets upheld through a humane statutory mechanism that can help to discharge from individual debt. So let me just end there. I think this is an important thing as part of sort of while managing and modeling for this is a very, very important theme that was cutting across all of the presentations that we heard so far. I think I'm just looking at it from the opposite side and saying what do we see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I request you to stay on because there will be some questions in the open house. Thank you. Next, I'll have a very brief presentation on how to make resilient societies after disasters. This is actually Thank you very much. I just want to also give an overview of the G20 initiative because G20 has several platforms. If you look at G20.org, there is a portal which has multiple platforms. So you have T20, which is a think tank 20. You have S20, which is Science 20. You have W20, which is Women 20. We have Y20, which is Youth 20. You have Startup 20, and so many other platforms which are there. So I think it will be very good for those of you who have some time and interest to really look at some of these because there are foundations, there are business, there are corporates, there are a lot of thought leaders, action leaders, a lot of people who actually are thinking in terms of solutions for humanity. So if you have the time, I would strongly recommend that you look at G20.org and look at the platforms. I think that will actually be very useful. I'm basically trying to look at building a resilient society after disasters by providing a context and background of what is really happening because of climate change and also because of disasters and extreme events and how basically communities are actually trying to really survive against all kinds of odds. We've seen that during the last 3 years, how COVID has impacted millions of households around 229 countries around the world, across continents, and how it has really paralyzed many households, and we've lost millions of people, and we really do not have the official numbers are really misleading because there are unofficial reports of many people who have actually lost their lives because of COVID, but reportedly medical certificates stopped in terms of organ failure or cardiac arrest or many others, even though they were COVID positive. So I think we need to really look at the context and background of disasters, climate change and extreme events, and look at the global scenario of disasters and the global frameworks for development pathways, resilience building of weaker sections and communities at risk, and look at climate finance for resilience building, and finally look at the policy entry points for social protection of stakeholder groups. In terms of the context and background of disasters and how to build resilience of communities after disasters, we feel that very important factor to consider is the increasing frequency and impact of disasters, climate change and extreme events. And poor people are often more vulnerable to become victims of disasters and they really do not have the creditworthiness or the insurance or access to various protection measures, and so they are actually extremely vulnerable. And the bottom line in disasters is that anything can happen anytime, anywhere, and so we need to be really prepared for any kind of eventuality which may actually happen. Community preparedness for worst case scenarios will strengthen resilience, and multi-hazard disaster management plans must be prepared to prepare for, respond to and recover from disasters, and intergovernmental platforms and national governments must be prepared for disasters, climate change and extreme events. Unfortunately, the intergovernmental platforms actually have been failure in most cases. And this is something which is a criticism, not a political criticism, but it is actually a criticism of risk governance, because intergovernmental platforms, whether it is SARC or ASEAN or SEPRADNAC in the Central American region, they are all struggling with limited access to resources and many other constraints. And climate change is a code red for humanity, so said Antonio Guterres, this UN Secretary General. The code red for humanity means that this is something which we all need to recognize, that this is something which we have it literally at our doorstep. And disasters and terrorism are two problems without borders, so said Kofi Annan, the former UN Secretary General. And we need to really work towards trying to identify solutions in each of these. And resilience is a legacy for our coming generations. Disasters cost hundreds of billions of dollars, hitting the poorest countries disproportionately and pushing millions into poverty. And we must tackle disaster risks and leave a more resilient planet to future generations. For those of you who have read a report called Our Common Future, which is prepared by the World Commission on Environment and Development, WCED, Our Common Future, and that is a report which really defined sustainable development, what Mr. Sarangi quoted. Sustainable development was defined by the World Commission on Environment and Development on the report Our Common Future as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And this WCED, the World Commission on Environment and Development, was led by Gro Brundtland, who was the Prime Minister of Norway. So we need to really look at disaster management as a cycle where you have the pre-disaster phase. In the upper half, we have two P's, preparedness and prevention or mitigation. And in the lower half, you have three R's, response, rehabilitation, and recovery. Response is basically relief, restoration of disrupted facilities and telecommunication, power, and so on. And rehabilitation is basically immediate reconstruction of damaged infrastructure and also houses and so on. And recovery is when you feel that people who have actually gone through that, communities would actually recover. But literally for people in Orissa, Assam, West Bengal, and in many other states in India, we are finding that they are actually living from one flood to another flood, or a cyclone to another cyclone. So they are literally reeling under the impact of disasters, and so we need to really bring resilience building as a multi-stakeholder initiative, and that is where we feel that academia, institutions, corporate sector, and others could actually come forward to work together to find solutions. Now, investing in multi-hazard response, preparedness, and disaster risk reduction is important. One of the reports from the UNDRR, the United Nations Office of Disaster Risk Reduction, it says that $133 billion of ODA was allocated for disaster-related aid between 2010 and 2019, but only $5.5 billion was invested in measures to reduce risks and lessen the impact of disasters. And what is really extremely frustrating is the fact that for every $100 spent on disaster-related development aid, only 50 cents goes towards protecting development from the impact of disasters. 50 cents out of $100. And that is really a pittance, So we really need to strengthen our disaster risk reduction efforts. And disaster risk reduction has been mentioned by Kofi Annan as disasters that don't happen. Because investing in disaster risk reduction means it is no photo opportunity for politicians. It is actually no opportunity for, the compassion to be shown by people distributing relief and so on. It is actually disasters that really don't happen. But we need to really invest in disaster risk reduction because we need to protect infrastructure assets and also household from the kind of debt which Deepthi was talking about. Academic studies find every dollar invested in DRR prevention can result in savings of $3 to $15 in the disaster losses. And investing in DRR is not attractive for government leaders because of the what is mentioned as the disasters that don't happen, as mentioned by Kofi Annan, and distributing relief after disasters offers photo opportunities for political leaders. Now, if you look at the global scenario for disasters, this is actually from CRED from Belgium, the Center for Research on Epidemiology and Disasters. If you really look at this, it's a very, very powerful slide which really talks about it. Look at these two numbers, 347 and 432 on the first slide, first part of the slide. 347 disasters from 2001 to 2020, but in 2021 we had 432 disasters. 2021 alone we had 432 disasters, but over the 20-year period from 2001 to 2020 we had only 347 disasters. So which means that we are finally seeing an exponential increase in the numbers of disaster events which are happening. And if you look at the second part, which is the human impact, the total number of people who have lost their lives, it is 61,212 people from 2001 to 2020, but in 2021 alone we had 10,492 people, and this does not include COVID. If you took COVID also into consideration, these numbers would actually really be exploding in terms of the number of loss of life which has actually happened. Now, if you look at the human impact in terms of the total numbers of people affected from 2001 to 2020, we had 193.4 million people affected, but in 2021 alone we had 101.8 million people affected. So which means these numbers are really exploding. So we really need to do something about managing disasters and building resilience of communities. And economic losses, it was $153.8 billion from 2001 to 2020, but in 2021 alone it was $252.1 billion loss of disasters, economic loss caused by disasters. Now there are four major global frameworks. The UNDRR's Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction in 2015 to 2030, UNDP's Sustainable Development Goals 2015 to 2030, and UNFCCC's Paris Agreement on Climate Change again from 2015 to 2030, and UN Habitat's New Urban Agenda 2015 to 2030. 17 goals, 169 targets, and so many indicators, and we are really looking at that. But if you look at this slide, which is actually for the Asia Pacific region, you find that out of the 17 goals, you have one goal which is actually showing negative progress. We are actually regressing, and that is on climate change. Now this is actually a report from the Asia Pacific region which has actually just been released. We need to really look at that, and there's also another report on the sustainable development, on the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction and midterm review, which was released just 2 days ago. And if you really look at these reports, this actually shows that we are all failing miserably in many of our efforts in disaster risk reduction, in sustainable development goals, and also in addressing poverty, malnutrition, and many other issues. So during the inaugural meeting of this civil society efforts, Mother Amarandamai offered 50 crores of rupees for supporting people with disabilities and also pregnant women who are malnourished, not only in India but also in the G20 member countries. So we're looking at civil society organizations which are working for people with disabilities and also working to support pregnant women who are malnourished in many countries who are actually needing support. So we would really look at some of these nature-based solutions which are needed for climate change adaptation issues, taking care of our planet for the long term, sustainable land and integrated fire management, dealing with climate change, protected area management, climate smart agriculture, agroforestry, integrated water resource management, integrated coastal zone management, etc. And we have DRR and climate change adaptation, environmental management, and also climate change mitigation. Adaptation and mitigation are two sides which we need to really address. Now, in terms of the definition of resilience, I'll take 2-3 more minutes. Resilience has been defined as the ability of communities. Resilience has been defined as the ability of communities to bounce back after shocks like disasters, climate change induced hydrometeorological disasters, extreme events, conflicts, and economic shocks like recession. And it's expected to be ensured by building back better after disasters. And post-disaster restoration, rehabilitation, and reconstruction must take special care that we are not rebuilding this. CSOs, community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, political parties, local self-government institutions, multilateral and bilateral donors, foundations, trusts, high net worth individuals, and corporate sector entities and academic institutions must promote resilience building efforts of communities at risk from disasters, climate change, and extreme events. Now, how do we really protect communities at risk? Protection of weaker sections is the responsibility of the state. Yeah, thank you. I'll just leave it. Sorry. Nice share screen. In terms of looking at poverty, deprivation, malnutrition, unemployment, inadequate access to water security, energy security, food security, etc., there are challenges, and we need to engender development by empowering women to be change agents. There are many climate finance funds which are there. I will share this presentation so that we will be able to have a look at it leisurely. There are many links to many of the climate funds which are available, and so we would like you to take a look at it and also look at submitting proposals, because there are also opportunities for academic institutions and corporate sector entities and civil society organizations to submit proposals to NABARD and then take it up on adaptation. So there are several such funds available, and I would just conclude by just mentioning one of the very powerful poems by Ralph Waldo Emerson called Success. To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to learn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition, to know even one life is breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded. Ralph Waldo Emerson, Success. And there's also another poem called My Soul Has a Hat. I won't read this whole poem because it is by Maria de Andrade. And the last 2 lines are important. We have 2 lives, and the second begins when we realize we only have one. Okay? And after seeing COVID and after having seen millions of families devastated, I really feel that we all need to really look at our second life. Thank you very much for this opportunity. We'll be very happy if you associate yourself with the C20 initiatives. There are many efforts which we are actually sharing. We'll be very happy to be connected. Thank you very much. We can open it for questions in case there are any questions for next few minutes. If we have any questions or comments. Yes.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Abhijit Shuri from IMDR. I have a question to Sarangi sir, because yesterday government of Maharashtra has declared this incessant rain as natural calamity. So yesterday's government of Maharashtra cabinet has released some decisions. One of them is that continuously rain is there in Maharashtra, in different parts of Maharashtra, and it is causing huge damage to the agriculture. So they have declared that it will be a natural calamity now. And how government will help farmers, because already the deficit budget is there. This is one question. Second question is that do we need to train the farmers to mitigate these risks? Because at the bottom level nothing is happening and they have continued with their same practice. Thank you.
Yeah, I also read this decision of government in papers. Now, I have always been of a different opinion. In the sense, yes, one or the other natural calamity happens and farmers lose crop and they need to assist, it's fine. Now, the other side is also equally important. If young farmer get better income in 2 years, if he has the necessary agri-related infrastructures, does he lose today in getting a fair price because those infrastructures are not available? And if they are not available, is it because we are not able to do enough investment? If we find out how much investment we make in the agri-related infrastructure on one side and how much we pay by way of assistance to farmers for natural calamities, they will far outweigh the amount we spend in agri-related infrastructures. So, shall I one or shall I more or another? Shall I when Punjab started producing more paddy, Punjab government connected every village to the mandi. That was an infrastructure which helped every farmer getting paddy to the market, get minimum food price. Okay. So infrastructures are also equally important, and if we are able to provide that investment and let him earn good money in good years, then perhaps he would have the ability to tolerate or bear loss sometimes. Today, because of lack of required infrastructures, which obviously require very heavy investment, perhaps he is not getting as much as he should get in terms of return from his land. Supporting farmers in case of natural calamities, we have now extended the relation. We used to help the farmer if the rainfall was more than 65 millimeters in a day. We used to call it ativrushti, excessive rain. And if the damage is more than 50%, then farmer used to be given some assistance. That assistance should be decided by government. Now we have said, सतत पाऊस मुळे नुकसान झाला तर आम्ही देऊ आणि 33% नुकसान झाला तर आम्ही मदत देऊ. From viewpoint of helping farmers, it's a good thing to do. But if we put our available investment on this, then our ability to spend on the agricultural infrastructure will go down. And you also asked one more question.
One more question was related to training the farmers, because they continue the same practice.
No, you see, we have to change the time. When I was Director Agriculture, Commissioner Agriculture, or Secretary Agriculture, I had staff of 35,000. And out of that, 10,000 people were at the village level. We are supposed to go to the village, meet the farmer, go to his farm, see things, advise him on the farm, come back, whatever they could not say, get it clarified in the fortnightly meetings, in the monthly meetings with university scientists, and go back to the farmer again. Now, that would be a very costly process, and they would be able to meet farmer. Today, we have organizations. So, like I know an organization which has 60 lakh farmers registered in there, 60 lakhs. Okay, in 3 states, and the farmer is standing in his field. Technology has come. The farmer is standing in his field and say, okay, this is my cotton crop, and I see this particular pest on my crop. And the man here in the center, he is able to see that and tell him, okay, this is heliothis, you have to do this, get this, dilute it to this extent and spray. This will be taken care of. So he gets instant advice on the field from a remote place. This is possible. So 60 lakh farmers are being advised in that. So we have to change our system. Now, if we have in Maharashtra, suppose we have 6 regions, in each regional headquarters, we create a laboratory of a call center of say 200 people. Then with 800 people, instead of 10,000, we will be able to reach farmer more instantly, right in the field, and give instant advice as they require. So we should switch over to that. Digital way of extension.
Yeah. Just to add to what Mr. Sarangi said, infrastructure is a very important area in terms of farmers realizing the right pricing for their particular product. So we as CES through our own CSR have done an exercise in Jharkhand, so I will briefly elaborate that. So there was a village in Jharkhand which where the woman had, the village did not have power in the afternoon, and all the precious working time for the woman was actually getting wasted. So we took up a initiative to create a microgrid solution, which is a 5 kilowatt solar and 15 kilowatt hour battery, and 1,000 square feet area in the village was actually dedicated for that. And now we actually set up a dal processing unit there, and where the women, there are 8 to 10 women who actually work, and for 10 months in a year they are able to get anything between 6 to 10,000 rupees per month, and almost huge dal is actually getting processed, cleaned up and sold to the market. We actually have created a brand called Bhumi out of that. Now JW Marriott is actually buying that dal from us, and few other hotels are also buying. The investment in the infrastructure is around 15 lakh rupees without the cost of land. So even if you take if you take say 400-500 rupees as cost of land per square feet, you can add another 5 lakh rupees for cost of land. And the dal processing unit typically makes around 70 to 1,000 rupees per month profit, other than what is being paid to the woman as contributors to this. So this particular exercise, even if you consider 20 lakh rupees total investment, is around 2.7 years of payback. So after 2.7 years, the facility will actually run for another 7-8 years, and after maybe 6 or 7 years, you need to replace the batteries. But this is something which can be extended to every place, and now Chhattisgarh government is calling us, Jammu and Kashmir government is calling us, and I'll be happy, sir, as you are on the board of HDFC Bank as a director. We'll be happy to take up this initiative through support from HDFC Bank, CSR, and this is something which corporates really need to support and take this ahead. We have actually approached few corporates here and few NGOs also. So let us hope for the best.
You see, you mentioned it in your lecture. Now we are the 3rd largest CSR contributor in the country after lands and TCS. Our budget is around 800 crores per year. I was chairman of the CSR committee for 5 years. Now, major chunk for so major chunk of our money goes to sustainable livelihood, on which she spoke. Then natural resource management, irrigation management, and support during natural calamities, and watershed development. I can tell you a project we are implementing in Maharashtra in Jafrabad Taluka of Jalna district. It's on integrated watershed development, which will change the face of a large number of villages simultaneously. And natural resource management, wherever we have implemented projects, they have been fantastic results. So a major chunk. We also spend money on health and education. We took a project where we trained the teachers on how to teach through an agency, and the performance thereafter in the schools are improved significantly. So it's HDFC has a very robust CSR, and we ensure that they are used for much needed purpose of the society.
In fact, recently we did a similar exercise where we powered the solar pumps using this microgrid solution. So that is something which can be very useful.
Okay. Sir, this anonymous question has come online for the viewers who have joined online. It's in Hindi, so I'll read it in the way it has come. चंद्रशेखर सर से हमारा एक सवाल है कि क्या सोलर एनर्जी के लिए कोई भी CSR फंड महाराष्ट्र में उपलब्ध है या मिल सकता है?
जैसे मैंने बताया कि माइक्रोग्रिड सॉल्यूशन है, माइक्रोग्रिड सॉल्यूशन के लिए अगर कोई फंडिंग करे तो इट कैन एक्चुअली गो अंडर CSR. इसमें यही देखना चाहिए कि कॉर्पोरेट को आप सही टाइम पे अप्रोच करें इन द क्वार्टर ऑफ जनवरी टू मार्च and present your proposals so that they can budget it around. No corporate can work without a proper budget and management guidance. So if you go during the middle of the year, it may not be possible for them to accommodate you, but you need to approach at the right time, and I think money should be available because this creates addresses questions of sustainability, livelihood. So I think money is available. It's a question of how do we approach.
May I speak? I'm Vinod Badankar from Jalbiradati. We have many conferences, nationally, internationally, at the district level. There's a question that I just want to ask the C20 team. What is the importance of the Udaharan in our ongoing progress? There will be more conferences and more conferences. The specific question I want to ask is, when will the people who have created their own resilience in situ, in the face of disaster, whether there were funds or no funds, means rather than waiting for us to create funds, wherever there is disaster, the first responders come from outside, but the people who live there also create their own resilience. Are we going to have them directly come here and participate? Because perhaps they are the creators of the wealth of resilience first. We are coming in as Pravasi, trying to give them, some money or some empowerment. So are we going to identify them? Because the Udaharan, that single word gives me the hope that we are on the right track. So my suggestion as one of the persons invited here is, please let us identify those who without fund, in situ, their resilience is their wealth of innovation or whatever they do. So we'll have to see that as wealth also and not just the money that we use. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very important question. We are looking at Udaharans, not only from India, but also from all the G20 member countries, and we've also started receiving several good practice examples. Udaharan is seen as an exemplar, a good practice which has actually helped communities to really address some of the problems on their own, because they have their own resources, they have their own capacities, they have their own endowments in terms of traditional knowledge, traditional wisdom, and also their own captive resources within the village, whether it is a retired senior citizen who has actually contributed in the armed forces or in any of the government departments or in an academic institution. They have a lot of value in terms of their own knowledge which they can actually share in finding solutions, whether it is a flood prone village or a landslide prone village. Many solutions are coming from local communities. So we are looking at these Udaharans, and we have started receiving several Udaharans from many countries by CSOs, looking at the good practices which can be replicated and which can also be scaled up. We don't really need pilot projects. We have many examples within the country and also from many other countries that there are good practice examples. So we need to really take it to scale, and that is where communities can really be empowered, and that is where faith-based organizations, spiritual organizations, and also community-based organizations are actually finding support. So we are learning from each other, and we are also taking your comment as a very valuable input to really look at that. There's an international jury which is looking into some of these, and we hope that in the next few months we'll be coming out with many of these udaharans which are documented. We are also reaching out and finding video documentation, very brief video clips on good practice examples from many countries who have actually really shown the potential for scaling up across the world. So we'll do that. Thank you.
You see, actually, the disaster is defined as a calamity of our own concentrated proportion to come out of which is beyond the ability of the local population. Then it is a disaster. Now, but who is the who is the first to help? Self-help is the first help. Those who are caught in the disaster. Now, outside assistance will come in half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, 24 hours. Like all international assistance reaches in 24 hours. Good earthquake, imagine United Nations UNDP has a plan where they have volunteers all over the world. And the moment, suppose Odisha will have a super cyclone, you come to know 3 days in advance, it's going to hit. So they are giving, all the volunteers are told, okay, you may have to go to this place, be ready, keep your itinerary free. Then next will come, okay, you book your ticket. You move from this to this to this to reach here by this time. Okay, so they will reach in Bhuj. When I went there, say Russian sleeper dogs had already come. Their only job was to find if there is still life under the debris. So today we have a system which responds very fast. But then second, the point is the fast help. So we train the local community, those who are volunteers, those who are competent, those who understand, those who want to do something to help others. So they must know what all they can do by themselves, so that the moment pre-disaster warnings and actions are taken by them, post-disaster, whatever little they can do, they do till outside actions arise.
Can I just give one example? This is not from the point of view of any disaster management, but the point of view of how alternative income streams can be created. And if you look at, say, Western Maharashtra, people have gone ahead and done alternative plantations in bamboo. And if you look at the size of the economy in Western Maharashtra, only bamboo economy, it has crossed 1500 crores already. So, it's a huge potential in terms of what can be done. I am fortunate that I had submitted a document to Niti Aayog in terms of bamboo industry vision 2030, and it has been accepted by Dr. Saraswat and internally circulated to come out with a policy paper on bamboo, which is already done, and they are finalizing the policy paper internally. It will probably come for public comments in the coming days. So this is something which is very important, and in that policy document I have clearly said how India can become a 5 lakh crore economy in bamboo. So from a 40,000 crore economy, how India can actually become a 5 lakh crore economy in bamboo. And bamboo is one of the most sustainable materials ever available in the world. Just to tell you on an example basis, tensile strength of bamboo is 1.8 times that of steel.
Will it replace sugarcane?
It cannot, but in terms of sustainable material, it is one of the best. It's just a question of how do we go about, China produces 20 tons per acre of bamboo, we produce 0.75 tons per acre. So you can see the potential.
So my question relates to farming in Maharashtra particularly, because Maharashtra has been seeing headlines of farmer suicides year after year, but and we have been seeing these suicides from a particular region of Maharashtra. However, when it comes to providing relief to farmers, providing crop loans to farmers, are we doing enough in terms of doing a feasibility study of which zones should farming actually be promoted? If we are having so much failure in farming in a particular zone, then why don't we really work on that and invest in coming up with solutions of alternative methods, or even declaring non-farming zones for particular zones if they are not performing in that agriculture region? So, what could be a viable solution for this? While we are talking on green finance, I believe investment in these green resources would also be a important thing to think about.
You see, our future farming has to base itself on first agroclimatic zone-based planning plus risk mitigation to continue resilience agriculture. Now, risk mitigation, we are now getting aware of the risk, like I mentioned, that rainfall will increase, but it will come in fewer spells. There will be greater dry spells, etc. So, more of the water will flow down, it will take away the soil. So, these are all that will happen because of climate change, excessive rain, etc. Now, our agriculture planning in different agroclimatic zones, based on the changes that are likely to take place, like I said, Nandwar will get 40% more than what they are getting, and Kulab will get 10% more than what they are getting. And as you go from south to north, it will go on increasing. So, we have 9 agroclimatic subzones in Maharashtra. So, for each subzone, we have to plan and accordingly change cropping pattern if required, change varieties if required, and change cultural practices if required, to see that the farms and the crops do not face the risk of the change situation.
Yes, sir. Quick suggestion or fairness. So if you are done, sir. May? Yeah. Okay. So I'm really there. I'm a chartered accountant and work in a similar field of raising capital. The only small, because a lot of stakeholders who actually influence. Yeah, because we want stakeholders who actually influence the government and government's thinking. The small year was all of this actually comes down to those $3 million or those $10 million, sir. So I think discussion around how this money will be raised, which is, for example, at one point of time, is, for railway bonds and so on and so forth. So you raised that point, sir, in your presentation. That can there be tax-free bonds? Can there be incentives for, if there's a corporation and people pool, for example, cars, and they say. So in short, incentives, financial incentives obviously give the fastest results. So for raising capital, some incentives so that retail investors capital, then I don't, at least the papers see a lot of effort being put up there. So I just want to check if something's happening, and more importantly, people like us are happy to contribute and give suggestions to people like you. Thank
you. All suggestions are welcome because we are developing economy, and it is important that our thoughts also develop in the right direction. So all good thoughts are welcome basically. It is important to ensure that enough capital is available for all kinds of development. In what form, whether it should be crowdfunding, whether it should be cooperative investment, whether it should be low return criteria, because if we sustain, then only we'll grow, right? People are not understanding that if you don't sustain, there is no question of money being, what is the point of having a market capitalization of 80, global economy, $80 trillion if we don't sustain ourselves. So first and foremost thing is, if you talk about equity investments, people should be happy with a lower return. Typical private equity, people look at 20% sort of return. So I've been telling people, be happy with 10% sort of return if you're looking at, sustainable way of, putting it. If you sustain, then probably the opportunities will be larger. And as far as the financing part is concerned, okay, whether it is 6%, 7%, tax-free bonds, some green funding options will be having, say, lower cost of funds or whatever. All those options need to be explored. In my presentation, I talked about priority sector banking. Unfortunately, banks today are there are so many RBI guidelines which talk about it, but in terms of real hardcore work on the ground, except for agriculture, which is pushed because of political pressure, the rest of the other areas are not really getting that kind of attention. People are not, even EVs industry is not getting funded. Even startup good OEs, original equipment manufacturer, are not getting funding because their products are not approved, they are not gone to the market, 1,000 vehicles are not running on roads. So these are all issues and challenges. So we need to learn and unlearn in terms of what we really need to implement. And I think that change of mindset is very important. As people say, change is the only constant. So let's adopt change.
Thank you, sir. government, you decide your priority. Now we decided road is our priority as infrastructure. Have we ever faced any problem of money? Money has come. So if climate action becomes a priority, in government budget a little bit high, one, and then private sector has to get in, either through CSR or any other means in big way. And then developed nations, they are supposed to do climate funding, all these funding actions that are happening now, 1,800 odd crores through NABARD in 40 odd projects all over the country, covering 150 districts and covering 1.9 million people, is happening because international funding is coming. So developed countries have a responsibility to support the developing countries, because developing countries suffer despite being poor, and developed countries are still enjoying much better life. So it is their responsibility. So as I said, it will be partly government funding, in-government funding, there will be state government funding and central government funding, then partly private sector funding, and partly funding from international agencies. Thank you, sir.
Just one more comment here. All of us are aware what is the GST collection last month, right? 1.6 lakh crores. The number of people who were paying taxes earlier was 3.5 crores. Now it has increased to 6 crores because of demonetization and other efforts. So you can imagine when the Indian economy becomes from $3.5 trillion to a 25 or $27 trillion, what can be the level of taxation collection in terms of GST as well as income tax? And instead of 6 crore people, if 15 crore or 20 crore people start paying taxes, you can imagine the kind of inflow the government can have and the money can be effectively spent.
Hello, we can continue with the questions over dinner. So I'm here to propose the vote of thanks. It's a matter of pride for me to do so. I would first like to thank Amma Mata Amritanandamai Devi for the important message of compassionate development. I am thankful to Athavle sir for reminding us of the teaching of Tukaram Maharaj that speak about the importance of nature. I would like to thank Mr. Umesh Chandra Sarangi for his thoughts on how production speed cannot be controlled until we control the population of our country. I am thankful to Mr. Chandrasekhar Chinsolkar for informing us about the new opportunities in green finance. I am thankful to Ms. Deepti George for the interesting insights on the financial lives of low-income households. I would like to thank Professor Vinod Menon, who was instrumental in our collaboration with Amrita. His vast experience of dealing with disasters is the inspiration that we need to build a resilient society of the future. I am thankful to the entire team of SRC and Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham, especially Dr. Murli, Dr. Sasangyan and Dr. Murli Krishna. The faculty and staff of IMDR and our student volunteers have done a fantastic job in supporting us, and I am thankful to them. I would like to thank especially our director, Dr. Shikha Jain, for the immense faith that she put in us to organize an event like the Policy Roundtable. Last but not the least, I would like to thank you all for being a wonderful audience. Thank you very much, and kindly join us for dinner at the Quadrangle. Thank you.
Kiran sir. Amay. Amay. Amay.